coming. Welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for January 27, 2015. May we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo, absent. Julie Gottschall, present. Richard Heck.
Present.
Christine Lettinger, absent. John Marizan.
Present.
And Susan Ryder.
Present.
All right, so we have a quorum and we can begin. We've already had our closed session. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, stand, Tony. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, number 4, we'll start with the opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please feel free to do so. And if not, we'll move on to offering the board the opportunity to add an agenda item in the future. If anybody has any ideas of things that you are concerned about or like to see addressed in the future, please raise that issue now. We can talk about getting it on the future board agenda. We have a couple items that are on that list that will come up in the future. One is the discussion of fundraising at the schools, also the discussion of an analysis of enrollment trends, and as well as an analysis of 4th and 5th grade multi-age classrooms.
Actually, we're not going to have an analysis. We're just going to talk in general about what we're doing with multi-age.
Right. So if anybody wants to add anything, and I would also say in the future, people watching at home think there's an item the board should be considering, don't hesitate to come and suggest that to us, and we can discuss it and decide if we want to add it to a future agenda item. So not hearing anything else, I'll move on to number 6, recognition, and Dr. Sophie would like to recognize some employees.
I am so excited to recognize the 2 teachers that we're going to be recognizing tonight. I'm going to go back to, and all my years have merged together here, but I think it was a couple years ago that these 2 young ladies came to me and said, "We have this great idea, we'd love to start a teacher mentoring program, what do you think?" And they had it all laid out, it was all organized, and it was all ready to go. And they ran with it, and we're so fortunate to have both of you here. We've had a lot of new teachers, so you've really got to experience the whole planning process. But we made a decision. Jay came to us early this fall and said, "Hey, there's this recognition that we could go for." What's it called again? Heroes in the Classroom. And we nominated both of these young ladies from each of their buildings. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. We'll start with Margaret. And if you want to call your teacher up to stand with you, that would be great.
Well, good evening, everybody. I would like to introduce you to Mrs. Amanda Willie. Amanda is a 3rd grade teacher at Lake Bluff Elementary School, and I was fortunate to meet her early on. She was part of the interview process for the team that came to my former school, Daniel Wright, to interview, so felt a connection with her right away. So it was easy to work with Dr. Sophie on recommending Amanda for this award. Also got to work with her this summer as she was working on the mentoring program. And as you know, at Lake Bluff Elementary, we had 13 new teachers this year. So that was really an important piece for me. It provided a lot of support. So it was already before the school year started, had a great impression of Amanda and how she goes above and beyond her responsibilities. So the question was, what are we looking for in a hero in the classroom? And we said a teacher who goes above and beyond her day-to-day responsibilities. Amanda works with staff and students outside of the school day. She teaches our Horizons classes. She developed the mentor program as we talked about. And she also is really involved in taking graduate courses. So she is involved in every aspect of her educational career. She's a respected leader amongst her colleagues and is willing to share ideas and tools from her classroom. She's a teacher who makes a real difference in students' lives. That relationship that she builds with her students is key. She often attends their events outside of school. We were just talking over dinner how she's going to a students' hockey game this weekend. And I had the opportunity to have another parent tell me about Amanda attending a theater event that her daughter was in and how much it meant to her. She makes a point to go to the sporting events and tutors students outside of school. Her classroom environment is reflective of these positive relationships. Her students show compassion and respect to their peers and adults. She was one of the first staff members who was trained in capturing kids' hearts at Lake Bluff Elementary School, so she was a leader in bringing that program to our building. Administrators who've worked with Amanda have observed that she could teach any student. She's a teacher who helps students build life skills. Bringing the Capturing Kids' Hearts program to her classroom and to our school, she is very invested in creating a social and emotional climate that encourages students to have a positive attitude, facilitating problem solving. Her students take ownership of their own learning. The classroom is filled with respectful behavior and with students who hold themselves and each other accountable. She's a true facilitator in her classroom and creates an environment where students are responsible for their own academic, social, and emotional development. Students in Amanda's classroom are constantly developing lifelong 21st century skills. She was also introduced to me last spring by Joanne Trahanas as someone to look at for encouraging in the field of administration, but selfishly I keep telling Amanda I want to keep her right in the classroom at Lake Bluff Elementary School. So I think she deserves a big round of applause.
Can I just add something to that for a moment? I don't hear very much about individual teachers, but my little neighbor who transferred into the elementary school, Eli, just loves you.
Yeah.
And he's come over and told me that directly.
She's the teacher Eli will always remember.
Thanks for all you do.
Yeah,
We
thank you
really
very much.
appreciate what both of you do. Nate.
Good evening. So from the middle school, we nominated Adrian Olmstead, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing that Margaret did and read to you the nomination that we sent in and submitted. So here we go. Adrian Olmstead teaches drama at Lake Bluff Middle School. Describing her as the drama teacher, however, doesn't fully describe her role. She also serves as the team facilitator for the fine arts team. Through this leadership role, Mrs. Olmstead has the opportunity to represent and support her fellow teachers. As a close advisor to the principal, she is frequently involved in decisions that affect the entire school community. Throughout her work as a team facilitator, Mrs. Olmstead's insight and understanding into our community has been invaluable. Her expertise in the area of curriculum development and willingness to support her fellow fine arts teachers has helped to improve and align the curricular standards across our fine arts offerings. Finally, as one of our teacher mentor coaches, she has worked to develop and vastly improve our mentor program that supports new teachers and their mentors. We're also asked to talk a little bit about how our nominee has affected the lives of her students, and so I answered that this way. As our drama teacher, Adrian Olmstead has a unique opportunity to teach students at each grade level within the building, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. She has capitalized on that opportunity by building positive relationships with her students as they grow from 6th to 8th grade. With her support and encouragement, students at Lake Bluff Middle School have learned to step outside of their comfort zone and in many cases have become involved, become incredible performers and artists. For many, these skills and talents they didn't know they possessed until taking Mrs. Olmstead's class. Beyond acting, Mrs. Olmstead teaches her students the confidence and determination they need to be successful in many different aspects of their academic lives. And pleased to announce that Adrian was selected as one of the heroes in the classroom, and so she was, as many of you know, the recipient of an award ceremony. There were representatives from Samara and the Chicago Bears who came to present that award in her classroom as a surprise. That was a challenge for us. Thankfully, I knew to give your husband a call and help him, allow him to coordinate some childcare and get everything squared away. She got to go to a Bears game as well. But probably another fun part was that she was awarded $1,000 to use toward her classroom. So I was going to let her talk a little bit about plans for those for that money because I know there has been some decisions made there. So.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to receive this award for something I love doing so much, and working at Lake Bluff has just been such an amazing experience the last 4 years. So with the money, I was able to purchase 4 GoPro cameras and a bunch of accessories to go along with my lights, camera, action class that I teach. So these cameras are going to allow the students to just get a new take on film and storyboarding and have this incredible experience. And so I'm very, very excited to be receiving those cameras, and so I really appreciate the honor. So thank you very much.
It would be cool if maybe in the future we could see the end result of some of that. You know?
One question. What did they decide what the musical is going to be?
It's Little Mermaid. We actually, I just spent the last 3 hours before this casting the show. So hopefully in February you'll be hearing from maybe an Ariel who's singing the song. Oh, that would be great. That's right.
Like last year when we had.
Yes.
Miami, so hopefully we'll have an Ariel come sing for.
We will look forward to that. And for all of us in Lake Bluff 65, you're both heroes in the class.
Yeah, thank you for all you do.
So thank you for all
We
you
really
do.
appreciate it.
And they both may need to head out to get their beauty sleep for teaching tomorrow. So thank you so much for attending and being recognized this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to reports, and if I'm not mistaken, we're going to combine A and B, the elementary and middle school reports. So now back to the podium is Mr. Blackburn and Mrs. St. Clair.
As we're discussing topics at administrative team, we this month we're talking about just the frequency of how often we have visitors that come to our schools and would like tours of the schools, and oftentimes they're students and parents or just parents who are coming to attend. And so Dr. Sophie thought it would be great to kind of feature and highlight what we do at the schools and kind of the time that it takes on our end to facilitate touring our buildings. So really since even just the beginning of December, I know we both have had 5 different visitors come to our buildings to tour, and they're oftentimes generated by relocation realtors. They're not necessarily residents of Lake Bluff yet, but each time we have a tour, the time that it takes at our buildings, at least an hour. By the time they come in, they set up their tour, and we take them around our building. Oftentimes we're stopping at various areas of the building to either speak to teachers, they might talk with students, and we tour the whole building with lots of questions that are involved. But then there's most likely a sit down with the parents as well. They're always really interested in sitting down with administrators to kind of learn more about our programs. So really it's about, I would say, an hour a week if you're averaging it out, how often we have people that come and are interested in the school. So Nate's going to tell you a little bit more about that process.
One of the things I'll say is that there's a lot to be proud of in Lake Bluff, and so doing these can be very much an enjoyable experience for me, but of course it is a very time-consuming one as well. 5 in the last 2 months, I guess, keeps us hopping. And usually there's a few different kinds of tours that we would do. There would be the family who is considering a move to Lake Bluff and maybe some other communities in the area and is looking to compare those schools. There may be others who are already residents of Lake Bluff, but whose children go to a private school and are looking to bring their kids back and would like more information about what the school has to offer. As Margaret mentioned, sometimes it's a relocation firm that's establishing meetings for somebody who's moving back from abroad and knows that they'll be in town for just 1 or 2 days, and can you rearrange your schedule because we have 45 minutes for you to meet with us. And so they all are very different, and in many cases it's just an initial point of contact. There may be then follow-up questions, or now I really like what I've seen, and I'd like my students to have the opportunity to come and actually visit your school. We do often receive, at least at the middle school, and I know on occasion at the elementary building, a request for shadowing, and I'm not exactly sure where that term's come from, but I think some other schools have coined it, and so we hear it a lot. And it comes with its own unique challenges. In our building, that can be fairly disruptive. Certainly to have a student who isn't a regular student in the classroom, but just following another student around to get a feel for the building. makes sense if we know that that child is going to be enrolling in school and maybe is just getting a more confident and comfortable transitioning into the building in a way that we might with a 5th to a 6th grader. However, there are other requests that sometimes are more, they just want to try it on and see what it looks like. And in general, we were not able to honor those requests just simply because of that disruptive nature. Of course, students are friendly and kind, and they would like to know, who is this person visiting my classroom? And if you spend the first 5 minutes of every class period introducing this person, it becomes disruptive. You may not have a chair for them to sit in. There may be students who are in the process of presenting or doing something that just isn't well aligned with visitors to the classroom on that particular day. So we do try and reserve those until we know that a student is actually going to be enrolling in the class, and this is a first step to bring them into the building. So there's a lot of that can be done, a lot of work that can be done as we welcome students to our building, and I think that's one of the things that at least I've received positive feedback on is we really felt informed about your school. But as Dr. Sophie mentioned, it's probably one of those things that people don't know much about, so we thought we'd share that with you tonight.
I think the personal connection that you guys make with families that are coming through or considering coming through is really vital to this community. Because I've heard many times how oftentimes you sell them on Lake Bluff. You may be the first contact after a realtor. So.
Any questions?
Is there a busy season for that?
Cyclical, yeah.
It seems this year.
It's been quite a bit this year.
This year, yeah, the new year we've had a lot. And of course the kinds of conversations that you might have with parents in the summer with their students that are enrolling new into the building in August, when everybody else starts, would look very different than a student coming in mid-year. And so I think that tends to be more involved. There's a lot more background information. What do you need on the first day of school? When do we start and stop? What kind of class schedule is my child going to have? Here are my student records. I believe they should be in this class. It's a much more involved process to bring a student in mid-year than it would be to start them fresh at the beginning of the year along with sort of everybody else. So I would say that, the beginning of the year, and so August, July, things tend to pick up, but then again in December, January, we seem to get another influx of folks that are moving around the first of the year.
I would say in the last month or so, I've had 2 or 3 from the Montessori school, and that it's parents are calling and wanting to tour for a couple different reasons. One is to make the decision, should we be making this transition right now? And then just today I was on the phone for 30 to 45 minutes with a parent who was trying to decide, will we make that transition mid-year right now or in the fall of next year? And so it's, and actually they contacted us and they'll be starting here next week. So, all those conversations, it's well worth it because we want students to start off really smoothly, but it's time consuming. So we're going to call our report behind the scenes in the day of administrator as we keep bringing, some of these ideas.
Any other
Is
questions?
there a way to make it more efficient? Like you have an appointed day for new parents? I know when you have people traveling that may not be effective, but it does sound like a lot of time and it's a lot of your time. And is there a way to maybe delegate part of that hour-long tour or something like that? I don't know. You're very accommodating. It's great that we're so hospitable at the same time. Your time is valuable. So
when possible, our secretaries do try to manage some of it. Most times they do want some time with the building administrator. And so at least at our building, that's how it works. I don't know about for you.
Yeah, that would be much the same. And fair enough, the parents will often ask, well, who would be the right person to talk to about this? And generally speaking, that's me. So the answer is thank you for asking, and that would be me. So we'll sit down with some time. But it would be nice if we could have sort of an established time. But you just never know when a job transfer is going to transpire or when somebody might be returning. Those are always the most interesting. The folks who are returning from somewhere very warm and overseas, and we're touring, and it's 3 feet of snow outside.
Sure.
It is difficult to do that, and there are definitely times where I've had to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not available, or I'm out of the district in a meeting that day. And generally speaking, people are understanding of that, and we'll do some kind of phone conversation or correspond via email.
Just from a community point of view, but it's a huge service that you do for the community. I know that's how I came to this town. I've actually gone with your predecessor and some people in the administrative office, and they sold me on the community. And I had met with communities up and down the North Shore, and I just think the whole town benefits from that kind of effort, the personal service. So it's a wonderful thing. I appreciate you
Our
doing it.
next life will be realtors.
I wonder, actually, as we talk about what we might be doing at the middle school, Nate, I'm wondering if there's ever a part of the tour where you sort of think, uh-oh, this isn't so great.
We're down that hall, right?
I always ask, do you have any?
Crash over here.
Very often they'll let me know, yes, and we have a child will be going to the elementary school. Wonderful. Have you been there yet? Is usually the first question. And if the answer is yes, I try and figure out a way. Our building is not as new, and we talk about that.
But it feels really good.
We use words like promising and charming and has potential.
You're a realtor, right?
Right, all those things you avoid when you're looking for an apartment in the city. But no, it's always. But truthfully, very often though that same parent tells me, but boy, it feels so warm and inviting because those middle school kids, many of them are just outgoing and they see us walking down the hall and they introduce themselves and ask the student's name and where they're coming from. And so by the end, we tend to overshadow the deficit areas with the warm, fuzzy feeling you get from the people in the building. That's our.
Well stated.
There we go.
Well stated.
Anybody else? Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
both. And they both have to head out. Their load has been heavy. So I told them after the reports tonight they'll be going out.
Okay, so we'll move right along to the PTO report and Ann Stewart.
Hi everyone, it's been a while since I've been here, so I have a pre-holiday break report and a post-holiday break report. I want to start off with time travelers took place with the first graders. They had Wampanoag Day where they get to learn about the Wampanoag Indians. Coincides with Thanksgiving, and they have, basically they kind of go back in time and they have different stations where they learn about how to create little pouches which simulate deer skin, that type of thing. They do some gardening type exercises. Anyway, it's always a hit. They love it. Also at LBMS was the book fair, which coincided with the band and choral concerts. This was the first time to use Lake Forest Bookstore. And again, gross sales were outstanding at $4,700 after the 2 nights. This was a profit of $940 to the PTO, so that was fantastic. Also, Science Alliance came to LBMS. Did you talk about that in your last report? Okay, Science Alliance came and they did some physics work with the LBMS students as an assembly. Spiritware, we also sold Spiritware before the holiday break. We sold $2,000. It's the first time we've used an online web store that was open for 1 week. It was an easy process from a PTO standpoint, and the PTO profited $750 from that. And now we're considering doing another one of those for the spring break. Post-holiday break, we've already had Jim Gill come and give a musical performance to the pre-K and kindergartners on January 15th. He's come back year in and year out and has been fantastic. The kids absolutely love him, help with reading skills and that type of thing. There was a Wolves hockey game on the 17th of January, and we were able to sell out all of the tickets that were allotted to the PTO. $4 per ticket goes back to the PTO, but it was just a fun event for families. And then lastly, because we are not doing a spring auction this year, the PTO gets to focus a lot of time on recruiting new volunteers. So I'd like to say that we are in that process. We have lots of vacancies coming up, as we always do. So what we're doing is March 3rd, we're going to have a night at WISMA between 7 and 9 p.m. And this is a way for other parents to come who are interested. They can learn about positions that are open and more about what the PTO does and what we contribute to the school system. And then the second one will be March 5th. That will be at my house, and that will be a morning coffee from roughly 9 to 11 a.m. Thank you very much.
Before you leave,
Yes.
I'm going to put you and Emily on the spot, and then I get my report done.
Okay.
This is the easiest way. Our building tours. Anne and Emily both were part of a group of maybe 10 to 12 people that toured many of the white buildings to give us some ideas. Mm-hmm. And so if you could just give some general thoughts to the day,
Sure.
that would be good.
That would be great.
Just as a background, White, just for people who watch this and not here, White is the architect that is leading the whole process. So,
And as soon as they talk, I'm going to wrap up in mine, but I thought it would be nice to get their perception.
I thought it was a great day. We went out to Des Plaines, and White had worked on 3 schools that were very close together, so we were able to see a lot in a short amount of time. The one thing I noticed was that they focus a lot on spaces that can be flexible. So much of their work, in Des Plaines you also have an issue with the planes flying overhead, so you could tell there was a lot of architecture geared towards preventing a lot of sound in the classrooms. But I was interested primarily in all the flexible spaces that they had, how, I guess, current they were, from a sense that you felt like you were going into a Starbucks in some instances, where they had booths where kids could come and work together. A lot of the furniture it's all movable, so it's on wheels. It's easy and it's light, and it's something where kids can kind of move around. So I was really impressed. I thought that it was a good tour, and I could see where kids want to be in that space. And I think one of the things that the business manager, I believe, said was that kids want to stay after school. They are actually setting up times where there is a monitored session where kids can come and do homework in the media center, and they want to be there because the space is so cool and it's conducive to kids working in group projects, working alone. So it seemed like there was a vibrancy to the space and what kids appreciated.
I joined the tour a little bit later because of previous work commitments, but I toured Aptekissick Middle School, which again was a very inviting space. You could see the ways in which the architects had designed the space to make it engaging, even from the hallway, with bright colors, window cutouts within the walls, even just they had some code written on the walls as you kind of came into this more media center. It still felt like a library, but it felt like more of an interactive multimedia learning space that you could see kids being very drawn to. And I think the use of furniture, again, was, you could see was very well intended, multi-purpose, from using cabinets that were also wall dividers for dividing that flexible learning space that Anne spoke of. The cabinets were also obviously storage, and then you could also use them to put up posters and other signage as well. They also had whiteboards that could be you could slide them along the walls for students to be doing different presentations. So you could actually take them off, carry them over, work on them, and hook them back up. Again, that flexible group learning, very inviting space. Even the chairs they moved and they were cushy and they just drew students in. And I think any space where you're having middle schoolers want to stay and learn is a really good thing. So it provided a lot of exciting potential.
Did you notice anything
Please.
about the integration of technology that struck you?
Yes, absolutely. You want me to go? Yeah. Within the Aptekissick Library, they had a green room, this fluorescent green. It was really neat, with flat screens outside the space, recording, video cameras and things, and then the flat screens outside the space for editing, and a whole sort of partitioned off area with more creative learning space and smaller group area, spaces for the editing to take place. But it was definitely, it definitely felt like the technology piece was a priority. As more of a traditionalist, I like that it still felt like a library, but I think that it edged very, very mindfully into the multimedia technology, multifaceted learning space. So,
I was going to say that they had these fabulous screens where kids could work on computers and edit what they were doing, but work together. So it was technology that I had not seen in a school, but you could see would be very well utilized, and prepare them to go on to high school where you're going to have this technology available.
Well, and actually, when we concluded the visit at Lake Forest High School, and we found there that they had that technology in their incubator lab. So it really was a nice flow through for the day to see what the possibilities are and then where our kids end up. I thought it was a very beneficial day.
I really felt like at the high school.
Let's make sure we talk into the microphone, okay?
I felt like at the high school that they had, I think it was the incubator program where they were having kids create sort of a business. And it was fascinating because that's something that you normally think kids are doing in college. And they would have to prove that this product could sell. They'd actually have to sell the product, and they had the space to develop it. So it was really fascinating. It seemed so far and above what I remember from high school, and that was exciting to me.
Thank you both for coming, and thank you for sharing. I put you both on the spot, so I owe you. Emily.
It's all right.
Since you're already there,
Yeah, it's perfect.
We'll move on to-
Well planned. Yes. All right.
for excellent support.
Yes. We have had a busy beginning of 2015. I had a meeting last week, and throughout January we were able to partially fund 2 grants. We have had 2 grant windows this year, one in November and one coming up in April, but we are always open to teachers with time-sensitive requests. So we had 2 of those come through. One for the SIT conference that's coming up, and the Alliance contributed $350 towards that conference. The other is for an author in residence program with Eric Roman and Candace Fleming that the Alliance contributed $2,500 towards, and we thank the PTO and the district for covering the remaining and majority of those other needed funds. Again, those grant requests were time sensitive, so that's why they were looked at in January. Our next grant meeting will be on April 21st, and our teacher liaison team will be working with teachers this winter and early spring to prepare for those grant requests. And I'd like to thank and recognize the administration for approving the grants, reading them, and having them ready for us at our table. We really appreciate it. So thank you, thank you. Our fundraising efforts are successfully unfolding. As of now, we're inching closer to our $25,000 goal, with about 70% of that currently contributed by generous community members, local businesses, and local vendors. And thank you to the many people in this room who have already donated. We very much appreciate it. And we're striving to straight line those contributions right back into the classrooms to enrich the curriculum for all Lake Bluff students, setting ourselves up to be able to accept grant requests in April, obviously, but also in the fall as well. Over the next few months, we'll be executing some additional marketing and additional fundraising strategies to meet and hopefully exceed our goal. Our next formal meeting is not until March, but we'll be meeting in committee during February to prepare for those grants and take further steps toward meeting our fundraising goals. Any questions?
The only thing I was going to say is when Emily sets the SIT, it's Students in Technology Conference.
Yes.
That's actually in February. We're bringing even more kids than we brought last year.
It's very exciting. Yep. Anything else? All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move to item 7E, and our Director of Finance and Operations, Jay Kahn, is going to give an update on how he is doing with his priorities as well as projects that he is currently working on.
Okay. Just going to quickly run through kind of what we laid out at the beginning of the year and let you know what progress has been made. I'll start with updating of the account structure. So the goals were to update our accounting structure to be more compliant with the school code and be more reflective of how we're spending. So what are we spending at each school? What are we spending by function? In terms of what are we spending on enrichment, remedial, extracurricular activities, so that we can use our financial records to see how we're doing and plan, and how we're doing in our strategic plan. And then also to create new balance sheet accounts and convert our books from a cash basis to an accrual basis so that we align. And so all those things have been completed, and we're working forward to, I think now that we will have 1 year of history with those accounts and in that structure, budgeting for next year and reporting next year should be a lot more easily done and go more smoothly. We've spent a lot of time on the procurement process. Just how do we procure our things that we need to function? And so we've set up some new processes, documented them in a library where staff can go and look up how to do things, because many people don't order things on a regular basis, so they can go back and refer to those documents. And then also gotten out and talked to people, understood what their needs are, and trained them on the best way to do that. So we've consolidated all of our credit cards. We had a lot of individual credit cards out there. Now we just have pretty much the one purchasing card that we're able to control. We're importing those transactions. All these transactions are being approved and have visibility, so we've really increased controls. We've set up a business Amazon account, so I think it's allowed teachers the flexibility because there's so many things you can buy in a very cost competitive and price competitive fashion. And we've made it easy for the district to pay for those items, control what's being purchased, and then to pay those bills. So we've streamlined that process. And I know our accounts payable people are very happy that things are moving a lot quicker through the district office. And I'm hoping the teachers are getting their items faster and that it's very clear on how they do that. And then just a more robust requisition and check request process. I know Gene has come to me on several occasions saying, why are we buying XYZ? And I think in the past you wouldn't have even seen those things, but now they're coming across your desk and we're able to have the conversation before we spend the money. So I think those are positive things. And I think we're pretty much done with that, and we just need the rest of the year to practice, and then I think it'll be old hat. Board policies have been updated for things like capitalization threshold and some other business items that we wanted to do. One of my big priorities was to update our banking. Our bank accounts, I've closed pretty much all of our bank accounts and transferred everything over to one, the Lake Forest Bank and Trust. We've set up those systems, so now we're able to send ACH payments for accounts payable. So when people submit reimbursements, everything will go ACH instead of a mix of ACH and check. We have dual approval for all transactions, so now when we send ACH files, multiple people have to approve them, so we're strengthening our controls. And also our fraud protection. Now, if someone wants to come and debit our account, we have to give them permission. I get pop-up emails that say you need to go in and approve things, and I log in with a token and a secure code. So I think those things have been accomplished. Two big things were hiring a new architect and hiring a new auditor. We had a pretty extensive architect search process, and we brought White on board and are working towards working with them in planning our middle school construction. So we're going to be very busy with our architect in the next year and a half. We've still got the life safety study to do. We're starting that in a few months. And we are in the process of community engagement for the middle school renovations. And we will be working, hopefully construction will be the summer after next. So we're working towards getting plans and going to bid and managing that whole process. So that's going to be a big job. We've hired a new auditor, and the other big thing now is negotiations. So we did a lot of preparation for negotiations. I still need to put the finishing touches on our financial model, so we have the tools to assess the different options. And so there's a lot of work still left to do on negotiations. And then forecasting and budgeting. I have committed to getting you some improved reports, and I actually took a stab at it this last month, but I found that the comparisons to last year were not that meaningful just because of the way things were done, and I couldn't get anything that I thought was going to add value. So I'm still working on those, and should see something coming on that within the next few months, and certainly for the start of next fiscal year. So.
That's it.
What do you do in your spare time?
I think I got everything. Yeah.
Jay spent a lot of time this year going out and meeting with teachers to explain all our new processes and procedures. I attended a lot of those, and I will share that the staff really enjoyed getting to know you. They know Kevin. Kevin's in the building all the time. So I think it was very beneficial for you to do that. He's worked hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so any questions for Jen? Anybody? All right, we're going to move on to item F, and Dr. Rubenstein is going to give us a similar update.
Might be a little bit more brief. I have not been as busy as Jay has.
On new processes anyway.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
You've been busy.
Some of the things that I have been working on, while the state of Illinois has been working to streamline some of the processes that we get to engage in the schools, One of the things that came up in their audit during the last year was that they needed to tighten up some of the things related to special education spending. And so we are seeing a whole lot of new requirements for us to document and document again, and then submit spreadsheets to the state of Illinois, not through typical channels, but through email and other sorts of channels. And so right now we're really working on what's called excess cost. So we're required by law to spend at least $1 more than on special education this year than we did last year. And so there's
Yes, you heard that correctly.
process of documenting that and making sure that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It used to be something that we could check a box on an application and that was good enough, and the state got audited and no longer good enough. So that has required actually Jay and I to work together on quite a few things, because their directions sort of read like, go to cell, D27 on this spreadsheet that you've already submitted to the state, and yada yada yada, and then spin around 3 times and then give each other a hug and those sorts of things. So that is exactly, exactly, the hugs. So I've been working on that. The first year of any assessment will come with lots of different challenges. I think that the added pressure this year of the park assessment, we used to give an assessment called the Illinois Alternative Assessment for students whose cognitive capabilities were much below the other cognitive capabilities of our students, and that has been replaced by the dynamic learning map. That whole process has just involved a steep learning curve. So I've committed myself since we returned from winter break to sending a detailed message every week to our staff about answering all the questions that have come up in the last week, talking about some logistics, giving them at least 3 things to be working on themselves as teachers to prepare for that, and then 3 things that they can be doing to prepare their students for that. So what students should be doing. So right now, this week, one of the things that you may talk about at student-led conferences or parent-teacher conferences is the need for accessibility features to be turned on during the park assessment. Those are some conversations that people have been having in class. I've had the pleasure of leading the technology working group to rewrite the technology plan, which John has been a part of, and so we've had 4 or 5 meetings. We're starting to move along now, but that is also a process, and we have asked, as a part of that, we've asked SinglePath, our technology partner, to provide us with some estimates about some of our various programs. So the laptop program for teachers, the one-to-one initiative at the middle school, what that would cost to continue, and all of those other sorts of things. So we're working on that. And in talking with Alice Wagner at the elementary school, it's hard for people to understand that beginning in January, we really start to live in 2 school years. January 7th, we opened up enrollment for new kindergartners and pre-K students for the 15-16 school year. We do that in January so that we can start to get a good feel for the size of the class and can work on staffing and those sorts of things. But really, that kicks off the whole process. That's why you guys are voting on the fees tonight. That we now really begin that process of living in 2 school years at the same time, and so that kindergarten enrollment piece isn't taking up a huge amount of time, but we're still fielding lots of phone calls, getting lots of questions, and we have some other things that we need to prepare with that. So.
And I would say we're living in 2 school years, and we will be also bringing summer school to you. So we're actually living in 2.5 school years right now as we are working through all that. And Kevin, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of Kevin's work and Mark's update, because Kevin also had an outstanding presentation last week at Lake Forest. So thank you both for everything you do.
And for all your hard work. You guys work really hard, and we see it, and we really appreciate it, so thank you. All right, so President's report. I have prepared some stuff, but then I also thought of a couple things that we should talk about really briefly as everybody else is talking. One is a piece of really good news that Gene shared with the board a little while ago that maybe we should tell the community as well. There was an article you found in your local
It's on-
patch.
It's on Lake Forest patch, but it was in my patch at home.
Okay, and I believe it was a reprint of something that Reboot Illinois did some research on that ranked the best school districts in the state. And there's a lot, I forget how many, but there's hundreds
50.
of them. No,
Oh.
there's
Yeah.
hundreds of schools.
646.
But out of that, they ranked the top 50. This list includes high school districts. And out of that top 50, we are number 24. But if you take out the high school districts ahead of us, we're number 18 among elementary districts, K-8 districts. So I think we have a lot to be proud of. I think that's fantastic news. But I hope it also inspires us to keep working hard and maybe move up a notch or two, as we move forward. I think it's fantastic. The other thing that I thought of that I should just tie some threads together, we referenced our middle school renovation construction projects at several different points in the evening. And I just want to make sure, because people may be watching this later and picking up on pieces and not getting the whole picture, we have a committee of community residents who have met now 2 or 3 times if you include the site visits, to discuss the future of the middle school. There's no commitments, but a lot of ideas are being tossed about. They went on a site visit with White, our architect, to visit a variety of projects they've done to get some ideas. And the plan is to develop plans, and whatever that committee recommends and the board decides, sometime over the summer of 2016. Correct?
And you'll see that in the school calendar when we talk about that later.
Just want to make sure that if people are picking up on this, that's the kind of time frame we're thinking of. Construction, renovation in the summer of 2016. President's report, what I intended to talk about was 2 things. Let's see, last Thursday, January 22nd, we had a joint meeting of what we call the tri-district committees, where the 3 school boards, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest District 67, which is their K-8, and Lake Forest High School District 115, all met at the West Campus to discuss and the NSSED, which is our special education cooperative, our role there, and some joint work we may or may not do with the other school boards, school districts in the special ed world. In attendance with me and Jean there was Rich and John and Leanne as well. I may ask you guys to kick in comments if you think I'm missing something. And well, lots of administrators. I'm getting there. Dr. Rubenstein did this amazing presentation, really led the whole presentation to all 3 districts, took charge of it, and was incredibly thorough and detailed and answered all kinds of great questions. And just want to give him a shout out. That presentation is available online if anybody would like to get into the details more, summarizing the work we do with NSSED. And it's worth the look. So the purpose of that meeting was to provide an overview of NSSED services that we utilize and how we utilize that co-op and their programming, as well as to talk to the 3 boards about what is required in a special education plan that you need to submit to the state should we decide to do some things on our own. Also plan to review a timeline should we decide to move forward, as calendar dates that we need to meet over the course of the next year to make that happen if we chose to do that, as well as to consider future joint tri-district cooperation in the special education world. So when I walked out of that meeting, I took away a few things. Like I already said, Kevin did a great job. NSSED provides many services for low incidence types of cases and students, such as things like kids with extreme behavioral issues, vision issues, hearing issues, many of which are just not practical for us to do on our own, that are available to us through this co-op. It's one of the reasons we belong to a co-op. Big takeaways, District 65 is not a heavy user, but we do take advantage of several other programs. The biggest things we use through NSSED are the North Shore Academy, which is their elementary and high school programming primarily for students with extreme behavioral issues, correct? As well as some physical therapy and some professional development, but not too much else. In total, we're into NSSCD annually right now for about $202,000 a year, 202 in the 14-15 year. For perspective, what that really means, that's less than 2% of our total budget. It's not a huge nugget for us. None of the tri-districts, District 115, the high school, or the Lake Forest Elementary, are particularly heavy users. They're heavier than us. 67 is into NSSCD for a little over $1 million a year, and but still ranked against the other 18 schools in the co-op. It's not considered a heavy user. And the high school is into it for about $390,000 a year annually. Big takeaway was, and this is significant, we really don't have any programmatic or curricular concerns with the services we get from NSSED. Nothing substantial. I would say our biggest concern in that area, and this I kind of think of this as a stretch, has to do with the idea that I think it's generally accepted best practice to the greatest extent possible to educate kids with special needs in your home district in the least restrictive environment. And so you could say that by bringing kids down to the facilities in Highland Park and wherever the different facilities are for NSSED, it's not always in the least restrictive environment, and there are some ways that we could in the future perhaps bring some kids back, and we're going to continue to look into that. The concerns we do have with NSSED, and they're not huge, it's kind of the takeaway from this meeting was it's not that big a deal. Cost of services, we do pay a premium. As we're a light user, light users pay more than heavy users. I'm sorry if that's what I said.
Saying per capita.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, and also when it comes to the amount of the dollars from IDEA, that they manage that money and it flows through to us after they take out their piece. They take out more from a greater percentage from small districts than they do from large districts.
That's beginning next year.
Beginning next year.
That's what the new structure.
Right. So we pay a premium as a light user. Small districts pay a higher share of that funding. And one of the things that I'll get into a little bit more is we recently kind of had a meeting where we uncovered that we pay a bigger share of overhead a proportionally bigger share of overhead than heavy users as well as non-users, which I thought was interesting, which I'll work into that. We talked a lot about, the question, there's a lot of discussion about what's next and what would happen if we withdrew. Probably the biggest concern that I heard if we were to move forward with the idea of withdrawing from NSSED was how do we prioritize and what is the opportunity cost of pulling out? In other words, we all have strategic plans, all three districts have strategic plans and initiatives that take up a lot of time. What are we going to take out of priority and move the NSSED initiative ahead of in order to accomplish all that work? It's a substantial amount of work. When Kevin was laying out the plan, the special education plan that you have to put together for the state, he put together this table of what we've got done, what we have partially done, and what we need to do. In my mind, I'm going through the amount of hours that it might take to put all that together and the amount of man hours just to put that plan together to say we're going to withdraw. That's not even doing the work to actually get everything together. It's just a plan. Huge amounts of work. So while there might be some savings in withdrawing, because we have seen some back of the envelope calculations about if we were to withdraw and participate as a non-member, using non-membership rates, but without the guarantees of service, we might save some money, but is that really worth it for the amount of extra work that creates? We're also giving up perhaps what I think is the biggest benefit of being a member is that guarantee of service should we have extreme needs children that need to be serviced and at a very short notice, that when you're a member and you have a kid who has extreme demands, they've got a place at that school, whereas there's no guarantee if you're not a member. So bottom line, I thought Mike Semick did a pretty nice job at the end of the meeting. He kind of put his position out on the table, Mike Semick being the superintendent at District 115-67, and it was pretty well received by everybody there. I'm not going to quote him verbatim, but he talked about how we spent a lot of time on something that has really a minimal budget item for all three districts, and it's getting to be a pain in the neck. It's like we spend so much time on this, and it's not something that is a huge item on our plate. Overall, we're satisfied with the services. We pay a slight premium, but it's probably worth it for the insurance policy. The feeling was that maybe our administrators should not probably dedicate any more time to this, preparing for a withdrawal, because we feel like we're spinning our wheels. That they should be including in their day-to-day work an ongoing evaluation of NSACD services anyways. This is part of your job, and we shouldn't dedicate dedicated time to this, but this is just part of what they do. That the administrators and the governing board members, myself, a guy named Mike Borkowski at 67 and Ted Mormon at 115, are going to continue to pressure NSSAD to introduce perhaps a pricing model that we feel more comfortable with. We'll keep working on that. We will continue to explore joint cooperation with the other tri-district boards, with the other districts, and where it makes sense, move forward with programming for our kids in the local district, but only when it makes sense. I think that covers that meeting for the most part. Do you guys want to add to that? It was a great meeting. You did a great job there, Ken.
It was nice to see all three districts together working
Yeah.
on something, trying to come up with solutions.
I thought there was a lot of thoughtful questions too. You know, people really care about, and it was very evident that people were putting the priorities in the order they should be. It was all about, people were asking questions about kids first, and so that was a good thing.
I also think it was very, very nice that we had staff members and an administrator, Margaret attended, and we also had a parent from our LDA, Lake Bluff. So we were very well represented as a district at that meeting.
Yeah. Oh, and Tim Thomas, the super from NSSCD, was there, who didn't really have any questions thrown at him, but he made a little statement at the end that he appreciated us all doing this. So then the very next day, I had another meeting with staff from 67 and 115, and Jay and I were there, as well as staff from NSSED, to talk specifically about our remaining issue, which is pricing. And the question was, Mike Borkowski, who's a very tenacious board member at 67, does a great job. He's the other governing board member. Got Tim and his staff to come and talk to us about why did they never bring to the governing board a pay for service, a pay-as-you-go kind of pricing model, and why didn't they even bring that to the board, the governing board? And we aired out some issues. There's been a lot of miscommunication over the years between NSSCD and administration at the three districts, and by the end of the day, the takeaway was the reason they didn't bring it to us was because they couldn't really figure out how to capture the overhead they needed in order to sustain a minimum level of quality services that they felt that they were hearing that the co-op was demanding. So I think they weren't being savvy enough with their approach to the finances. We found out that, as I said earlier, non-users, because we had talked about what the benefits of maybe withdrawing and participating as a non-user, non-users pay a lower share of overhead than users do. And us being a light user, we pay a greater percentage of overhead than a heavy user. So we kind of walked away from that meeting asking NSSD to consider recognizing the political reality that it's an 18-member board, and we tried to get them to change their pricing model to a pay-as-you-go approach. That vote was shot down 14-4. And I think the political reality is we're not going to get them to make dramatic changes, but we would like to work to try to get them to tweak it such that non-user districts, when they are allowed to participate in the co-op and buy their services, pay a greater percentage of the overhead than they currently are, because right now we're really subsidizing non-users, and it makes us want to think about being a non-user. And so we're going to keep pushing that and working on that end of it, and force more meetings and see where that goes. So, Jay, anything I didn't cover on that part?
I just want to comment that was it only 2 months ago we were talking about this radical withdrawal?
Yeah.
And I have an idea that some people in this room had a big part to do with getting everybody to sort of step back,
Take a breath.
take a breath, think about it critically, and really get people thinking about the priorities. So thanks for the leadership. I think that's key, and continuing to drive the issue of the
Finance.
finance side of it. But
It's important to keep hounding them on that, but I think the priority is a little different. Yes. So, anything else you want to add, Kev?
No.
All right, Gene?
For my report?
No, from anything I said, did I miss anything or anything I should be?
No, I was very, very proud because the conversation was all about kids. And that's what I think it needs to be about kids. The financial piece was presented, but I think we needed to get down the services first before we could even talk about the cost. So I thought it was great, and I too thought it was great the three boards worked together. I'd like to do that more often.
And moving forward, I'm hoping that I can spend a lot less time talking about NSSED. Give it its proper priority. All right, so you want to go to the
Mine is easy
superintendent's
because
report?
I was going to talk about the facilities, and Mark kind of wrapped that up
Okay,
for me. So
sorry.
we are going to be having our next meeting, I think it's February 11th. So we'll be talking about it at the February 17th meeting with an update. Jay and I are meeting with White next week, and we'll be talking about a timeline. They're going to be coming to present to you. There's a lot of things going on. So.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sophie. All right, so we're going to go now to discussion items 8A, and we're going to review the January, February, March calendar, board planning calendar to make sure that we're following our planned activities. And Dr. Sophie will lead us on that.
So if you take a look at your board planning calendars, I just want to make a couple comments. If you look at January, the evaluation of the superintendent is on here, and Mark and I are meeting this Friday to determine when exactly we're going to be doing that. The tool is ready with the changes from the committee, so we're ready to get started on that.
Doesn't it feel like we just did that?
Yes, it does. We've reviewed the closed session, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about the audio tapes and the closed session recordings a little bit later. We've done student fees, building use fees, staffing we started. We are going to start something new in the board approving the parent-student handbook, which is primarily just a list of the policies that are appropriate to kids anyway. So that's ready to go with red line strikeout from our law firm. That will go in our committee the whole meeting in February, so you can look at it prior to vote. And then I have to meet with Drew and Ron to get our tri-board meeting set for the school district this year for the village, park district, and school district meeting times for.
Yeah, those sort of, the tri-board ones sort of fell by the wayside a little bit this past year. So.
Yeah, we've got to get that back going. In February, again, we've got evaluation of superintendent on goals. We have to set the time and place for regular meetings. I'm going to be asking you to vote on that this evening. The school calendar will be approved. We're going to be discussing that today and at the next COW meeting. We'll be discussing certified staffing plan at the next two meetings for approval at the February regular meeting. And we'll look at the beginning of the non-certified staffing. So February, we're right on target. We're not going to go too much into March, but we are right on task for everything. A reminder that in March we approve all the field trips according to board policy that are out of state or within a certain radius. So we're right on task for our board planning calendar. Questions?
Anybody have issues they think should be on the board planning calendar that are not? Moving right along. 8B, 2015-2016 school calendar committee information. Dr. Sophie's going to discuss with us about the committee made up of teachers and administrators working on this.
Okay, by your seats, you should have had a 3-page document, and we're just going over the top document right now, which is the tentative 15-16 school calendar. We're bringing this to you right now for discussion because we're still waiting for Lake Forest's framework for the 16-17 calendar, because we'll be asking you for approval of 15-16 and 16-17 framework, which usually means the beginning of school, the Christmas break, the Easter break, and when we get out. So if you take a look at this calendar, we had some discussion, and our whole purpose of our calendar next year is really to start a little bit earlier, end a little bit earlier in June, and then we'll start later in August of 2016, so that we have a longer summer for construction at middle school. I have asked White 3 times, sure we can do this. We're on a timeline, we can do this. They have reassured me many times that we're on the proper timeline for this. So with that in mind, we took this year's calendar and we just moved it up a couple days. So if you could see, the 17th and 18th, our teachers would be back for Teacher Institute days. We would start school the 19th. Now, one of the differences, I think the Lake Forest High School starts the 24th. So just a note. Our regular holidays are the same. We had some discussion about parent-teacher conference times. We felt that with the beginning of school starting a couple days earlier, the October dates were perfect, because the whole purpose is to try to realign goals and really get, catch any kids that are struggling at the beginning of the year to turn that around. November, we've got a waiver day. We're in session. Veterans Day, as usual, we have our 3-day Thanksgiving holiday. We've got our 2-week Christmas holiday, which aligns with Lake Forest High School. In January, we've got our Martin Luther King, again, parent-teacher conferences, just like this year. February 12th is our Tri-District Day. We're going to come back to President's Day, because that pretty box that's red and green, that reminds me of Christmas. We're going to come back to that day. In March, we have another waiver day for Casimir Pulaski Day, which we're in school. That's all that means. The 11th of March is an Institute Day. Our spring break. Important to note that March 21st through 25th of 2016, that 25th is Good Friday. So that's really Easter weekend, so therefore we gave the 28th off to kind of extend the weekend. Plus it aligns with Lake Forest then and Lake Forest Elementary also. April, look at that. Nothing on it right now. May 6th is an Institute Day. We've got May 30th as a Memorial Day. And then we've got June ending on June 1st right now. And I'm going to walk you through the emergency days. I'm going to say it again, but I think I jinx it. I'm hoping we don't have to use them. If you look way to the bottom, I'm going to walk you through the emergency day order. Our first emergency day that we would use would be June 2nd. Our second emergency day that we would use would be June 3rd. Our third emergency day that we would use would be February 15th. Our fourth option would be to take the May 6th Institute Day, have the kids be in school, and then on June 6th have the teachers come back. That's a possibility. And then June 7th is our fifth day, emergency day. You'll note on here that we don't have any early release days because we are negotiating the contract. And in fact, this calendar may change a little bit after negotiations also, but we feel strongly that the beginning of school and the holidays will remain the same, and that's what's important to our families, that they get in their hands.
Something else that came up that seems to be important to a number of families that I talked to was the use of the emergency days and the idea that we switch out that Monday after spring break and use that as an emergency day instead of the President's Day, because most people when they travel, take a week off, they don't extend to that Monday, and then a lot of people felt that they would prefer to have as a guaranteed day off that President's Day because so many employees have that day off as well. So that's the feedback that I got. They're like, why do we, a lot of people have out of town trips for that February date, but they all were planning to be back in town on that Monday. So that is some feedback that I had gotten.
Do you think that will change at all? Because the high school has that Monday off too.
I don't think so. I imagine most families take the weekend, and then the parents get back to start a full week of work, and spring break's over by that Sunday. So I know that would be my personal preference as well. I don't typically go away for President's Day, but I know a lot of people do. But there was an absolute consensus at this gathering I was at amongst the mothers that was the preferred way to approach it. So,
Well, and that's something too. So, and we just have to bring that to the calendar committee. So basically it would be making sure President's Day is definitely off. The 28th then of March, what we affectionately call Easter Monday, would be an emergency day. So we might still have it off, but it would be an emergency day.
It's just that both districts, the high school and our district, have traditionally had that Easter Monday if it was the Monday following spring break. Right?
And that's what they shared with the calendar committee. But I'd be happy to bring that back. We have to be flexible this year because we're starting so much earlier. And really, I mean, when you look at it, August 17th feels early. But it also makes me feel better that we're going to have that longer summer, the following summer, to get our work done. Any other comments? We'll bring that to the calendar committee. This will come back to you at the February 10th meeting, along hopefully with a framework for 16-17, and then you will not vote on it till February 17th.
okay, very good.
All
That
right.
looks good.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
Cold
All right, we're okay.
Item 8C, cold weather days. Dr. Sophie's going to share with us
Last
the
discussion.
decision-making process for school closings due to foul weather.
And I'm not going to go through the whole process. I think as a board, this is something I'd like you to just take a quick look at. When you Google wind chill charts, there's an old wind chill chart. Don't say that fast 3 times. And there's a new one. And what I'm finding that, first of all, I will share that most superintendents across the state said that the first week of school, we got hardly anything done besides monitoring the weather, which I start getting very irritated because that seems to be a waste of a lot of energy doing that. I know the state of Minnesota actually mandates at a certain point, and the schools don't have a choice. They just say, if it gets to such and such, all of our schools close in the state, we're done. That will never happen in Illinois. There's a real mixed bag as to when you close and when you don't. And if you make a bad decision, to me, it's not whether people are going to be calling me. My concern is if we make a bad decision, it could impact a child. So when you take a look at this chart, and it's not absolute, but it's something we really work with. If you look across the top, that's the temperature. And on the left-hand side, and it didn't print out on here, is really the winds. So if, for instance, with a negative 5 degree temperature outside and the winds calm at 5 miles per hour, the wind chill is going to be minus 16.
Are those sustained winds or gusts?
Good question.
I don't know that
That's an
answer.
important question,
Yeah.
because you can have, winds at, being a former meteorologist,
Think-
winds at 10 miles an hour.
Thankfully,
gusts.
we don't have to predict that because wind chill
Right.
is just
It's
not
given
the
to
gust.
us.
Yeah, it's just given to us. So
I see.
it,
Wind chill
So
is
what's the
given to
purpose-
us.
What's the purpose of looking
Well,
at this chart?
the purpose of looking at it is this. When you see the colors and you've got color printouts, when you get to about the middle of the chart, you get into frostbite occurring in 15 minutes or less. And that's where most school districts, especially with school districts with buses, have concerns. If you're right on the borderline, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the weather can be off by a degree or 2. But as you move further to the right into the chart, you have a good chance that frostbite can occur in 15 minutes or less. Now, I will share the week we canceled school on Wednesday. On that Monday of that week, our buses, several of them were running 15 minutes late. So keep that in mind. We've got several little ones that get themselves off to school and they're standing in bus stops for 15 minutes or more. So, our bus company is great. They will always pick up the kids, but they don't always guarantee on-time delivery. So I think that's a piece that you just need to keep in mind. So the whole purpose of this chart, and this is what the weather people use for this, and then they give us the wind chill. But this is what we use when we make decisions. And then,
Is there a criteria that establishes when you're going to delay school or not have school?
What we
Is
have
there a
been
certain wind chill factor?
what we have been using in our area generally is negative 25 wind chill. If you've been following the news with what happened in High School District 214, they have been using negative 30, and they had school, and the superintendent had 250 not so nice messages, and he said, okay, well, I've been using negative 30. If you want me to use negative 25, I'll use negative 25. I think this sensationalizes itself to such a point that it truly takes up a lot of time, and you always doubt the decisions that you make. But I will tell you the other factor that we have, which other districts may or may not have, is we all email each other in Lake County. So you start seeing about 1 o'clock at school district XYZ is not going to have school. And then you see school district RST is not having school. And everybody just keeps throwing it out. So by the time we call, which our little cohort of people usually meets in the middle of everybody else. One of the things we have to consider is we have a lot of young staff, and if all their kids' school districts are out, then childcare is an issue. And then we have to worry about whether we have enough subs to even run the school district. So it's multifaceted. I will tell you, Mike Semick and I spent a lot of time making sure that we made good decisions for kids. I often get, and there's been a lot of editorials, well, I'm sure I went to school with these wind chills. There's no question. Number one, I didn't know any better because none of this was ever publicized. And number two, I think the world has changed a lot since then, and we have the information. And I really think that we have to be concerned about all kids, and we do have concerns about kids at bus stops. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm not asking for any feedback or...
Jean, this is the thing, you're never going to win. You're going to take
I
heat no
agree.
matter what happens. I completely trust you to make the right call.
But I wanted all of you to know so that if any of you get any calls, we do use data for it. It's not something that
It's not arbitrary.
we arbitrarily do.
All right. Guys, ready to move some action items
Yes, we are.
quickly?
All discussed previously.
Did anybody else have any questions about wind chill before I move on? I know John loves that topic. How many boards in Lake County have a part-time meteorologist, a former meteorologist on the board? Not many. Anyways,
But you do know who Jay's father's good friends with, don't you?
Tom Skilling,
Yes.
Oh, his brother.
Personal friends.
the most famous
Tom,
meteorologist in
guest speaker the
Illinois.
next time we talk about wind chill.
It's a good thing that was not something like
All right. Action items 9A 2015-2016 student fees. Just a quick refresher. At our last meeting, Jay put together a meeting on fees, a memo dated January 13th of 2015. You have it in your board packet. And what this shows is we have not touched fees since like 07, 08, and before in some places. The overall increases are fairly minimal in most instances. And does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments before we go into a motion? All right. May I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 student fees as presented by the administration in a memo dated January 13, 2015, and presented in your board packet?
So moved.
Second.
We have a roll call on that, please.
Sure. Mark Berry.
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Hegg.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Motion is approved. All right. 9B, 2015-2016 building use fees. Similarly, Mr. Khan presented to us on January 13th, 2015, a memo recommending some minor changes in the way we have set a fee structure for building use by outside organizations. We recommended a change, some minor wording changes. So our lawyers added a clarifying sentence to make sure that this is limited to organizations. The first three options are limited to organizations serving District 65 or the community. I think that did a good job in clarifying it. And if anybody had any other questions or comments or concerns, discussion, raise it now. If not, we'll move for a motion to approve the 2015-2016 building use fees as presented by the administration in your board packet and the memo dated January 13th of 2015.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes, the motion is approved. Board meeting calendar. You have a updated board meeting calendar in front of you. Terry put it on your table. The only change is that in 2016 there was on March 15th there was a possibility of it also being and/or March 22nd meeting. The March 22nd has been removed, so where you see March 15th, it's March 15th only. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, discussion about the calendars?
No.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 school board meeting calendar as presented by the superintendent with, insert proper date based on today,
March 15th,
with March 15th,
2016.
20, I'm sorry, I got motion as presented by the superintendent with March 15th, 2016 included on it.
Janet?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes.
Motion's approved. Great. All right. Item 9D. Authorization of destruction of closed session tapes. This is something we discussed in closed session earlier tonight. May I have a motion to authorize the destruction of closed session verbatim recordings from October 23rd, June 12th, 2012 through June 18th, 2013 as recommended by the superintendent.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item 9E, authorization to release closed session minutes, also as we discussed in our prior closed session. May I have a motion to authorize that closed session?
Oh, we're going to talk about that, right?
Oh, right. We need to table that for a future. Do I have a motion to table that
Just till February.
till February?
So moved.
All in favor?
Did you have a motion to do that?
No.
No? Okay. So we're going to table that for a month, so next month. So we need.
Motion withdrawn.
All right. That disrupted my rhythm. I was flying.
Right along.
Okay.
Keep that rhythm through
Yeah,
policy.
we'll get it. We'll get it. Okay, so now we're on policy. Item 9F, approval of policies for first read. We've seen these policies in a committee of the whole. I believe we had Terry,
She met with you on
our
all of
lawyer, come and talk to us about all this, and she's made some revisions to them. And I would like our policy committee representative to
What exactly?
to
Just
make
say
comments
if
if
you
you
have
have comments or suggestions.
Well, I do, and I try to keep it to what I think are more high-level comments. I could nitpick them to death. I will spare all of you that.
Yeah, we're not approving it tonight, so if you have comments,
Yeah,
I
the
think.
one that I think needs to be reworked is the last one, the community relations one. And I know we had a good amount of discussion about this last time. Tonight we approved the fees.
So
but
8.20?
8.20, right.
Okay.
It just isn't clear, and I think we need to bring some clarity as to when we will approve it, when we won't, what the fees, put the fees in here, I guess, but, what groups will be charged a fee, when it can be used during school hours, when not during school hours, because as written, I think it's almost incomprehensible. So I would ask that that one be revisited. To track the fees, I think we should lay out the different groups that can use it. It's not clear to me, if you look, for example, the very first sentence, school facilities are available to community organizations during non-school hours. Okay. Are they also allowed during school hours?
No.
It says, okay. Because down there, the next paragraph says that student groups, etc., can use the school facilities at no cost during regularly staffed hours. So maybe that means not
Those are-
school hours, but when there's
Right, when
some
we have
oversight.
staff there.
Okay. In any event, I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be clarified. We talk about when approval won't be given. I like the language, disruptive. Approval may be denied for uses that may be disruptive, inflammatory, obscene, vulgar, etc. I also like the language in the last paragraph that says school facilities and grounds will not be made available to individuals for personal or social reasons or for business enterprises. I think those two concepts of when we won't grant permission should be put together. Again, so it just needs to be a clearer read. Someone needs to wordsmith it better.
Those are all good suggestions, Julie. It does sound like that we could clarify that the meaning is all there. Perhaps there's not a concern about the substance, but it is still a little confusing.
All right, I will do this and hopefully get it to you at the cow so you can see it before you do second read.
Okay, good. The other issue I wanted to raise is on policy 7192, and that has to do with the timeout. And it speaks to a timeout for a period of 30 minutes or more, which seems like a lot to me.
Kevin can address that.
And that seems to be language that was added, and that seems to be what will trigger the need for a report and disclosure to the parents. And 30 minutes just strikes me as a long time before you'd have to make a report. But if you could maybe speak to whether that's the appropriate time.
30 minutes was what both of our legal counsel suggested. It's what's suggested by the Illinois State Board of Education, and is in alignment with federal IDEA and various other groups regarding the sort of trigger point of timeout, isolated timeout.
Needing to report it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
It's 29 minutes or 25 minutes. What?
so in,
What happens?
In the district, we often, I shouldn't say often, their students will be asked to sort of take a time out away from their classroom for a period of 10 minutes. And it's not a situation where it is becoming a pattern so much that it needs to be reported to me at the district office or to Dr. Sophie or to you all or to parents unless it is beyond that 30-minute mark. We are always attempting to engage with parents and working with parents to let them know patterns of behavior, but that 30-minute mark for reporting is what was specifically recommended by both of our counsel, Terry Engler and Terry Hodges, and then
They both looked at this policy.
and then the other various organizations.
Okay. And I can defer to that. I know as a parent, if my child was out of the classroom for 20 minutes is a long time to segregate a child. I'd want to know that. 10 minutes, I agree with you. 10 minutes seems to me like that's sort of, normal in the normal course of a timeout. But longer than that, it's something that I'd want to know. That's just my editorial comment. So maybe we would consider having a shorter threshold for reporting to parents, or maybe we just don't need that because it happens anyway, and teachers just take it upon themselves to be in communication with the
I do
the
think
parents.
it happens. Our reporting happens already. I think that 30 minutes legally is a much bigger issue. It triggers a lot of other things.
Oh, I would expect it to, for sure. Okay.
Any other policy comments?
So if I could so are you asking us to?
Well, I guess I'm asking does anyone else have a feeling on this?
I generally agree with you that 30 minutes does seem like a long time. I'm wondering if there's a endeavor to language we might add something like, well, I don't know, something pushy, like in general we will endeavor to reach out if a period of more than 15 minutes is required or something.
For the safety of the students, right? I mean, this is pretty
Rare.
huge thing. I mean, it's not for just smart dogs. It's for, creating danger to the rest of the classroom.
I don't object to the use of a timeout for whatever the teacher feels is appropriate. My issue is more as a parent, where I'd want to be notified that this had occurred.
So maybe some sort of outline in here about how we strongly encourage all staff members to work with parents whenever there's behavioral.
Would that just go on the procedures?
It could, yes.
I think it really, I find it better. I feel pretty strongly about this one because this is really the first time we brought a policy that has been reviewed by both attorneys.
Yeah.
Because it's
Right.
such a critical policy. So I do think that, and we're gonna have to put procedures together for it. I think
I see.
the notification of parents needs to go in there.
Okay.
So if we can include that in
Okay.
procedures.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Is there anything in here, I can understand having a bad day and wanting to know about that with regard to my child, but if they had 2 or 3 bad days?
That's
so
the
that-
pattern.
but that's in here, the pattern is in here.
That's what we're really talking about in terms of the reporting requirements. When there is a sort of a pattern of behavior where, and we track this, that we are, number one, of course, reporting it to parents, but number two, that it triggers some other procedural safeguards for our students. That staff begins working with me to see if the plans that we have in place right now for that student are really appropriate, and if not, what else do we need to work on with that student?
What other supports can we give? So,
Okay, if you'll indulge me, I am going to raise one more. I can't help myself. Paragraph or policy 7.2.
720?
720, sorry, yes, 720. We refer to it as a protected classification. I think the right word is protected characteristic.
This.
I mean, I know it is legally, but I even think for just general, language issues.
Protective character.
Gender identity is not really a classification, it's a characteristic. So if we could just replace that word classification with the word characteristic throughout, I know that would be in line with how legal parlance, and I also think it just makes more sense.
Got it.
Thanks. Okay,
Thanks,
what
Jason.
now do we need?
No, I appreciate you going through that so quick. Yeah. I need a motion to approve policies for first read as presented by the administration, which includes 720, harassment of students, 7190, student discipline, 7192, isolated timeout / physical restraint, 7230, misconduct by students with disabilities, and 820, community use of school facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Susan Ryder,
Yes?
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig,
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
The motion is passed. Motion is approved. Okay, approval of the personnel report. Please note that on your desks you have a revised personnel report, which has the addition of 1 certified resignation. So, may I have a motion to? Well, first of all, is there any discussion, conversation about the report that you have?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the personnel report for January as presented by the administration, which includes the resignation of 3 non-certified personnel, a Melissa Pasquazi, who's a kindergarten classroom assistant at the elementary school, effective December 19th, 2014, Kugas Mikhalian, who's a classroom assistant in first grade at the elementary school, effective January 16th of 2015, and Liz Evans, the lunchroom supervisor at the elementary school, effective January 16th, 2015, as well as the following certified resignation of Lucy Pryor, who is a second grade teacher at the elementary school, effective March 27th of 2015.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig,
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Motion's approved. 9H, approval of consent agenda. We have 10 items on our consent agenda. Does anybody need any of those consent agenda items pulled to be discussed separately from the consent agenda?
No.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for January 27th, 2015, as presented by the administration, which includes special Board of Ed meeting minutes for 12/3/14, closed session minutes for 12/9/14, committee of the whole meeting minutes for 12/9/14, truth and taxation hearing minutes for 12/16/14, regular Board of Ed meeting minutes for 12/16/14, closed session minutes for January 13th, 15, committee of the whole meeting minutes for January 13th, 15, P-card report, bills payable, and the December treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes. Motion's approved. Okay, that is our action items. Item 10 is a FOIA request. We had one request by the district. A Scott Reeder, who's a newspaper columnist, requested two things. Provisions within the collective bargaining agreement providing for compensation, pay, and/or benefits for union officials while performing union-related activities, as well as the pay record of the employee who received this benefit. Any comment on that?
No.
All right. Last opportunity for anybody in the audience to comment, make public, address the board. If anybody would like to do that in the future, please come to our meeting. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn this Board of Education meeting at 8:35.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.